Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephen Napoli with Terra. I am President and CEO. I do appreciate that you're all going to be joining us here for our inaugural Terra Third Thursday webinar. I would just ask that those of you that were thankfully on time for our meeting, you just give us some patience. And we're just going to wait here for maybe a minute or two to allow some of those folks that have yet to join, maybe had a meeting backed up versus this one, to give them just a couple minutes to get logged on, because the technology can be finicky at times. So again, we do appreciate you being here. We're going to get started here pretty quickly, and we've got I think a very exciting, interesting, and informative program for you today. So again, just stay tuned. I will also mention that this webinar will be recorded, so we will be sending out a link to the recording that you can share with other teammates when we are completed. For those just joining, yes, we are live. We are just waiting a few moments to allow some other folks to join. We know sometimes this technology can be difficult to log in, so we're going to give folks just a couple of extra minutes to log into the event. And just to test to make sure that the system is working while we are waiting for everybody to join, if there's somebody in the audience that would just maybe send a quick message to the chat that confirms that you can hear, that would be greatly appreciated. But again, for those that are just joining us, we are live. We are just waiting a few moments to allow more people to join, knowing that this technology can be difficult from time to time to log into, and that there's some folks that are probably ending one meeting to come to this meeting. So your patience is appreciated. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. All right, I appreciate for those that have submitted information here through the questions section to say, yes, you can hear me. I do appreciate you letting me know. It is now 2:03. I'm going to just set a time here that we're going to get started at 2:04. If that's okay, Eric.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes to allow some stragglers and some folks who are having technology issues get on board, but we will be recording this session again, so it will be available to everybody at the end. So we'll just go ahead and get started, because the whole point of these programs is to be quick and brief and informative, and that's what we're going to do today. All right. Well, according to my clock, and that is official Apple time, it is 2:04, so we can go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Stephen Napoli. I'm the President and CEO of Terra, the Electronics for Use and Recycling Alliance, and I appreciate you all here joining us here for our inaugural Terra Third Thursday webinar. Today's presentation is actually the first in a series of 2 webinars, today and next May, or excuse me, not next May, next month, May 20th, the 3rd Thursday, to talk about battery best practices. So again, I mentioned I'm not going to try to be long-winded, and I'm not going to try to sell anything today. Just we have scheduled 45 minutes. That includes the presentation from Eric and about 15 minutes of Q&A if we can fit it in. So we're going to get started. I want to just first make a quick mention of Culture Recycle, who is our sponsor today. that for those of you that don't know, which I would imagine everybody does because they are so well known within our industry, that they were founded in 1994. It's a nonprofit organization that's committed to protecting and preserving the environment through responsible end-of-life management of consumer batteries, cell phones, and related products. Our presenter today is Eric Frederickson, and he is the Managing Director of Operations for Call to Recycle. His experience includes more than 18 years in engineering and operations management roles at transportation solutions like UPS and XPO Logistics. He has a background in logistics, safety, corporate compliance, and he helps businesses, municipalities, and individuals safely and compliantly manage their end-of-life batteries. So before I turn it over to him real quick, again, I'm going to be monitoring the chat, monitoring the questions for some Q&A at the very end. And we'll also be recording this and putting this out here at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Eric.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. You know, everybody, as Steve said, my name is Eric Frederickson. I direct the operations here at Call to Recycle. I have, in addition to our responsibility for our operations, which encompasses logistics, fulfillment, distribution, and reverse logistics, I've also got responsibility for our downstream vendor network and our safety and compliance programs as well. So when Steve invited me to speak today on lithium-ion battery safety, it's something that's very pertinent to Call to Recycle and what we do every day. It's something that we've gone on a bit of a journey and an evolution with, just with regard to how we've evolved our approach to and our views of our safety program over the years. But I also know that it's something that's a very pertinent topic for others in the recycling community as well, particularly in the certified recycling community, where we have a lot of intermediary organizations that are receiving e-waste and scrap and disassembling and then sending further on down to downstreams. So, you know, some of the kind of consumer-oriented tips that you would typically hear about, hey, one of the best practices for a battery is don't ever try and remove a battery from an embedded device. That inherently doesn't work for the line of business that we're in, because by default, we've got to remove the batteries from the devices. So it puts us in a whole different risk category. And it means there's a different set of approaches that we need to take in order to manage and mitigate these risks. And I hope to speak to some of those things directly today and hope to add some value to the operations that all of you run in your individual areas of responsibility. So I want to start off with the question of, when did your views on lithium-ion battery safety change? You know, most of us have been in the waste and recycling industry for a number of years, and we went through life dealing with batteries for really decades without there being this significant safety impact. And it's really only been in the last 5 or 8 years where lithium-ion batteries have come to prominence, and then even more recently where they've come to end of life. And that's where we're seeing the majority of the issues with lithium-ion batteries. So I want to tell you when Call to Recycle's view on lithium-ion battery safety changed. Call to Recycle's view on lithium-ion battery safety.
Traffic is moving again on part of the Ohio Turnpike eastbound, where
changed on June 7th, 2017.
A FedEx truck there caught fire. This is video a witness sent into 27 First News. You can see it across the highway there. Hazmat crews tell First News that truck was carrying lithium batteries. The fire is now out, but crews say it could still be a little while before the road is cleaned up and the mess cleared away. Stay with First News and WKBN.com for updates to this developing story.
So it's one thing to just say that FedEx truck that was on fire on the side of the Ohio Turnpike was carrying lithium-ion batteries. It was carrying Call to Recycle's lithium-ion batteries. So it was a pretty catastrophic event for us. We were embargoed by FedEx. Consequently, we were also embargoed by UPS at the same time when that occurred, and it really caused Call to Recycle to reevaluate how we address safety in our programs. So before I get into some details on the changes that caused in our program and lessons that we learned along the way, I'd like to go into a little bit of detail about Call to Recycle and who we are. So as Steve said, we're a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1994 to deal with emerging state and federal regulations. At the time, it was specifically to deal with cadmium-based batteries and the environmental hazards associated with cadmium-based batteries. We were founded by the 5 largest battery manufacturers at the time to help them manage their existing and emerging regulatory compliance obligations. We were the first consumer battery stewardship program and are still the only such program of our kind in North America. Unlike many places across the world where there are regulated stewardship programs, Called Recycle is a voluntary program, so we're dependent on our sponsors and stewards to participate voluntarily in our program and to fund our program. The general waste and recycling community, all of you know, but there's a general misconception to the public that there's a ton of money to be made in this scrap. And ultimately, while if you have single streams of waste materials, there is some revenue to be made off that portion of the business. But in reality, the act of collecting, aggregating, sorting, disassembling material and transporting it all over makes it so that a program like Called Recycles is something that can't be funded based on the revenues we get from the critical minerals that are in batteries alone. As such, we're funded by the battery and product manufacturers who take part in our program and ensure that we provide consumers with a way to recycle batteries free of charge. So Call to Recycle is an all battery program. We were started off focused on rechargeable batteries, specifically cadmium, but we've expanded the program over the years to include services for primary batteries, which have become a relatively large portion of our overall program. And recently, we've also started offering services specifically oriented towards damaged, defective, and recalled batteries. So while we did not handle the Samsung Note recall, that's a very broadly known one. If you think back to that, Called Recycle works with product manufacturers to take products like that Galaxy phone that have a battery safety issue to get those products off of the market. Because of our own safety issues that we've seen over the years, but also because we know that there's a need for it in the market, we've also worked with a number of partners to bring a number of battery fire safety tools onto the market as well. Since we first started collecting batteries, we've collected over 130 million pounds of batteries. That includes about 30 million pounds of lithium-ion batteries. And one of the key metrics that Called Recycle judges ourselves on is what we call our accessibility. Right now, 86% of the US population lives within 10 miles of a Called Recycle free drop-off location. Our largest presence is at retailers. So we maintain presence at a variety of big box retailers, including all Home Depots, Lowe's, Best Buys, Staples, Office Depots. But we also maintain a very large present network of both commercial collectors as well as municipalities and local household hazardous waste drop-off sites. So when we look at what Call to Recycle collects, 2020 was a milestone year for us. We collected 8.4 million pounds of batteries. It's the largest number of batteries we've collected in a single year. We collected just over 3 million pounds of primary batteries, which is a pretty substantial increase. And we collected just over 5 million pounds of rechargeable batteries, which was a hair down from the previous year. Now, as I said, when we were first started, we primarily collected nickel cadmium batteries. And so you can see at the beginning of our life, we really didn't collect many primary batteries, but we've seen a steady growth in battery collection over the years. If we look back to that period of time from 2017 to 2018, the reduction in collections that year directly relates to some of the safety issues that Call to Recycle experienced in that 2017 fire and some of the actions that we took to really start to gatekeep where we get our collections from and to increase the standards for our collection sites and the batteries that they send in. But one of the things that I think is important that I'll speak to a little more later is understanding who you're receiving wastes from, exactly what they're sending you, so that you can make sure that your employees are equipped to properly handle it as it comes in the door. I also want to touch briefly on battery collection trends by chemistry in the United States, because this is very pertinent to the safety topic. And it's similar to something that's been going on in Europe for the last couple of years as well. So as you can see, at the beginning of the Called Recycle program, 97% of what we collected was cadmium-based batteries. And it really didn't start to change until about 2014 4 or 5 when that number dropped down to 70%. In 2020, our nickel cadmium collections were down to 15%. Similarly, we've collected lead batteries over the years. It's increased and it got as high as about a quarter of our programs, but been holding steady in the teens for the last couple of years. Alkaline batteries has been a growing portion of our program, and nickel metal hydride batteries really kind of peaked out in about 2011, and we see that dropping off. Nickel metal hydride batteries were not the dominant chemistry for very long before, between NiCad and lithium ion, and were quickly surpassed by lithium ion batteries. So we don't see that portion ever growing again. And what it really speaks to is that red portion of the graph. The red portion of the graph is the lithium ion batteries, and that's where the growing trend is. Our collection in lithium ion batteries, with the exception of 2020, which we view as a bit of an anomaly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our trend for the last couple of years prior to 2020 was that lithium ion battery collections increased about 30% every year, year over year. We think that this trend is going to continue. We believe that it's also going to accelerate, particularly because the use cases for lithium ion batteries are going to continue. We're seeing lithium ion batteries now in applications like e-mobility for scooters and bicycles, industrial applications like forklifts, and even applications like marine and aviation, where we never would have conceived that batteries would have been able to power these devices. What this ultimately leads us to is the issue that we're having with lithium ion batteries is not going to go away. I hear people frequently talk about solid state batteries and the next generation of batteries. And while I have optimism that we will continue to find battery technologies that mitigate some of these safety risks, the reality is that when we look at manufacturing life cycles and how long it takes to stand up a facility and then integrate those batteries into the products that they power, all of us will likely be long retired by the time the actual lithium ion battery safety issue is behind us. So the key takeaway here is this is something that we've all got to be equipped to address and talk about and deal with for a number of years. So getting back to the fire that occurred at the UPS truck on the side of the Ohio Turnpike in 2017, it really caused Call to Recycle to take a critical look at our programs, our safety, how we address safety at Call to Recycle, and what I'm going to refer to as engineered and administrative controls. So when we look at administrative control, what can we do to address training, communication, collection site and consumer engagement? And then in engineered control, what types of physical barriers and protections can we put into place to reduce either the likelihood of a thermal incident when you're handling a lithium ion battery, or to reduce the severity of that incident should it occur. So in 2017, we got together and we started up what we call our Charge to Safety campaign, and we introduced some mandatory training for all of our collection sites. We actually had about a 30% reduction in collection sites over the years, from 2017 to 2018, but we also didn't have a corresponding reduction in collections. So what we learned is that the collection sites that we kicked out of our program were not our highly engaged, active participating sites. So one of the lessons that we learned here is sometimes you're better off to work with a smaller and more engaged set of waste generators than to really have an open arms approach and then just be stuck receiving whatever you receive from an untrained or disengaged consumer basis. From an administrative control standpoint, in the Charge to Safety program, Call to Recycle implemented a mandatory safety training program for all collection sites. Call to Recycle still maintains over 20,000 public-facing collection sites. That's in addition to the several thousand private, non-public facing collection sites in our program. We required all collection sites to go through our battery safety training. And the safety training addresses some topics that we'll go over in a little bit, which are really the key ways that lithium ion batteries catch fire and the actual steps that can be taken and should be taken to prevent those fires in transit or in handling. Additionally, we made a couple of ancillary training activities, including our Battery Prep 101 and a series of other training videos to address battery safety. I think one of the important learning lessons for this is it's important to segment your customers and have messaging that's oriented specifically to specific customers. So for example, next month's webinar is going to be focusing specifically on battery safety tips for consumers. Call to Recycle is the designated battery stewardship program in the state of Vermont, the state of Minnesota, and the state of New York. We're also the designated program in the regulated provinces in Canada of British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec, and Prince Edward Island. And what we find is that when you work with regulatory authorities, there's an expectation that you're going to take some responsibility for the safety all the way through the battery life cycle. And so the key takeaway here is segmenting your audiences and making sure that you have information that's appropriate for those audiences. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, I want to make sure that we're speaking to topics that are relevant to and pertinent for waste handlers today. Whereas next month, we'll talk about topics that are much more specific and targeted towards a more public-facing consumer audience. So in addition to administrative controls, another risk mitigation technique is what we would call engineered controls. So we've got two different pictures here. On the left of your screen, you can see the Call to Recycle collection box. Prior to 2017, Call to Recycle used an unlined fiberboard box to collect our batteries. So even though fiberboard is a paper product, it doesn't catch on fire and burn very easily. But with a lithium-ion battery fire, it will absolutely ignite. So Call to Recycle researched and developed and ultimately was granted a patent by the U.S. Patent Office in 2019 for not just our collection box, but for a flame retardant liner within our collection box. One of the things that we've seen with this is when we have situations where we have non-compliance in our collection program and we have thermal runaway in a battery while in transit, we have an engineered control in place that will contain that battery fire within the box. So we do audits at our sorter sites, so the places where our boxes go when they're sent in from our collection sites. And we also get feedback from our parcel handlers like UPS and FedEx. And we've seen some really great success with the flame retardant liner, mitigating the damage and the consequence associated with a lithium-ion battery fire in our cartons. Now, when I mentioned Europe a couple of slides ago and how this is the changing battery chemistry makeup is a pertinent topic for them as well, one of the things to consider is that Europe has had what's called the battery directive in place since 1992. The battery directive extends extended producer responsibility across all EU member states for batteries, all types of consumer batteries. Well, when you put out a battery collection program that orients towards all batteries, what you primarily get are alkaline batteries, because by weight and by mass, these are far and away the most common types of batteries. Similarly, a Call to Recycle Canada program collects about 85% alkaline. One of the things that we have been able to share with our peers across the EU is the patent and the use of our liner in our box, because in those European programs, when you're primarily collecting alkaline, you don't experience the fire hazards that you do when you're collecting lithium ion. So in that regard, Call to Recycle is a few years ahead of our European peers who are just now getting that critical mass of lithium ion batteries in their collection programs to where they're experiencing the safety issues that we've been seeing since about 2017 in the US. Additionally, when we look at administrative or engineered controls to safety, on the right side of your screen, we have Call to Recycle's damage defective battery recycling kit. Now, on first inspection, this looks very similar to the other type of damaged battery collection kits that are on the market. Generally, what you're going to see in a type of kit like this is a packing group 1 metal drum, so a 5-gallon 1A2 so steel open top drum /X packing group 1, that's filled with some type of non-combustible absorbent material. So Call to Recycle introduced Cell Block as our extinguishing agent in our DDR kits in 2018, and we started a stronger relationship with Cell Block a few years after that. But one of the things that I think is important to consider is that not all fire mitigation tools work equally well, and it's important to evaluate what type of tool you're using, whether that's a extinguishing agent like Cell Block versus vermiculite, or a fire cabinet. Yellow fire cabinets are designed to hold flammable liquids. They are typically non-venting, and so they're typically also not going to be appropriate for use with lithium-ion battery fires. Lithium-ion battery fires generally need to vent, but they also need to have a way to cool the air off that's being vented. So again, it's important to consider what type of administrative controls you can put in place in your facility to mitigate the consequence of lithium-ion battery fires. As we kind of continued and evolved on through our safety program, Call to Recycle piloted a program in the Bay Area of California in late 2018 that we called Avoid the Spark. This was really grown out of a relationship and a need seen by the California Product Stewardship Council, so the CPSC, where they found that 65% of the batteries that were happening at recycling facilities were being caused by lithium-ion batteries. If you look at the graph on the right side of your screen, what we tried to do was correlate the public education program that we undertook with our collection site with the occurrence of at-risk battery boxes. So the green is the number of boxes that we saw each month from the 5 Bay areas across the 18 months of this program. And then it's got the period leading up to it on in through the program in 2018. And then the blue line is the percentage of at-risk battery boxes that you can see. So you can see that in October of 2017, we peaked with, in those 5 Bay Area counties, 38 of our collection boxes were non-compliant with our terminal protection requirements. So that's individually bagging or protecting the terminals of batteries. And that was nearly 30% of all of the collection boxes that we received in that month from the Bay Area. So fast forward down into the last few months of the program, we were generally hovering between 2 and 5 non-compliant boxes, well below 5% of our total collection boxes. So one of the key takeaways for this for us was that consumer engagement takes a while to work, but if your messaging is targeted and specific, then messaging and consumer awareness can be a very positive driver towards safety results. The other key message of the Avoid the Spark program, in addition to terminal protection for collection sites, was to try and educate consumers to keep lithium-ion batteries out of blue bins. And it'll be no surprise to this audience, but one of the things that I typically have to share with non-recycling related communities, so people who work more either just in the sustainability space or the battery space, is that while it may seem counterintuitive, part of good sense battery recycling, you really have to encourage consumers to keep batteries out of the blue bins. Once batteries go into mixed municipal waste streams, they're really just a fire waiting to happen. So as we continue through our safety program, as I said, we started using Cell Blocks products in our damage affected battery kits in 2018. In 2019 and on to 2020, Call to Recycle formalized a partnership with Cell Block Fire Containment Services, and we procure and source, use, and offer a wide variety of safety products in partnership with Cell Block. So on the top left of your screen, you can see a non-traditional damaged battery recycling kit. This uses an aviation grade textile heat suppressant that can withstand lithium-ion battery fires. One of the things that we like best about this is, as a sustainability organization, the envelope, so the main material of that damaged affected battery kit, is reusable. So we actually just won a sustainability partnership award from one of our key partners for introducing this product for their damaged batteries, because we're able to reuse those liners. And then the box is, of course, recyclable. Calder Recycle has been working with municipalities for commingled battery solutions using the Cell Block X product. Pad fire suppression pillows, we've got a demonstration video of coming up in a little bit here. That's a product that we feel very strongly about for use in the e-waste community. And I think that when we watch the video, you guys will be able to see how it's really a superior offering than the traditional 5-gallon Homer bucket of sand sitting at everybody's feet. So transitioning from Calder Recycle's evolution of safety to safety across the waste and scrap community. So Ryan Fogelman at Fire Rover is really a strong advocate for battery fire safety and a strong advocate of the waste and recycling community. He aggregates what I would say is some of the best industry data on scrap facility fires. This graphic is a little bit busy, but if you look at the gray bars are 2019 and the blue bars are 2020, and the red bars are 2018, you can see that 2018, 2019, and 2020 were really starting to far outpace 2016 and 2017 when it came to battery recycling fires. So it really underscores a previous point that these fires and these risks are not going to go away on their own. We know that lithium-ion batteries aren't going to go away, but we also know that with consumer engagement and advocacy, we can encourage consumers to do the right thing. So ultimately then in the recycling community, the question becomes, what's at stake for the industry? So you can see on this article here, which is not from a waste publication, it's from The Verge, recycling plants are catching fire and lithium-ion batteries are to blame. Ultimately, at risk for the industry is the entire well-being and livelihood of the industry, because the financial repercussions of lithium-ion batteries are so catastrophic that you can't run a solvent, profitable, or even break-even operation when you're dealing with an increase in fire activity. Making the issue even tougher is the insurance implication for lithium-ion battery fires. In working with our partners in the state of California, we've had partners say to us, if I have one more battery fire, I won't be able to get insurance. We know of another site that's had to go through 7 layers of reinsurance. So reinsurance is when one insurance company isn't willing to take on all of the risk of your facility on their own, and you have to get multiple people to buy a little bit more of that risk. It becomes very burdensome and very costly. But one of the things to ultimately consider is insurance companies make their own underwriting decisions based on real claims data. So when insurance rates are going up and people are struggling to get insurance, it's really because the struggles that the industry is seeing are very real. So ultimately, the question then becomes, what do we do? How do we actually address this? And I've spoken some to a couple of methods that Calder Recycle has employed. But I do want to go into a number of things that I hope will be more pertinent specifically for this audience. So in understanding what we can do, I think it's important to look at the topic of what actually causes lithium battery fires, because then you can start to segment what your risk mitigation tools are going to be. The first cause of a lithium-ion battery fire, as I said, with the Samsung Note recall and fire issues, which really brought the issue to light, is manufacturer defects. And ultimately, to the consumer and to the CPSC and to the industry, it doesn't matter who's at fault. But what's ultimately important is that when there are recalls, the managers of products take responsibility for the product that they put into the market and offer a compliant way for consumers to get those products back out of the market. Another common cause of lithium-ion battery fires, particularly in shipping, but it can also happen in storage, is short circuit by terminal to terminal contact. When you look at a lithium-ion battery, there are sometimes, particularly in older tool batteries, there will be 2 big metal plates on either side of the tool pack that you put into the drill. Those are generally going to be your positive and negative terminals. In more advanced batteries, are typically going to be multiple terminals. So there'll be the positive terminal, the negative terminal, and then other terminals that will provide information to the tool or device itself, and to the battery management system. So generally your voltage level, your state of charge possibly, but they're going to be multiple terminals. When you have a case where there's a metallic or conductive connection between the positive and negative terminals, you have a feedback loop within that battery where the energy just starts to go in a circle in itself, and that's going to result in the battery heating up very quickly. And you can actually do this with an alkaline 9-volt battery as well. So short circuits from terminal-terminal protection is a very common cause of lithium-ion battery fires. It specifically speaks to the importance of following good sense and compliant terminal protection packaging. So that's either individually bagging batteries, taping the terminals of batteries, manufacturer or OEM packaging where individual batteries are positioned in such a way that the terminals can't come into contact with each other. Another cause of short circuit batteries that we've observed in lithium-ion battery fires is water damage. I think that this is an important note for the scrap community because you can often tell when something has been submerged. It's got signs of corrosion or water wear on it. Batteries that have obviously been submerged should be treated differently and should be treated as an at-risk battery. They should be segregated from the rest of your facility until they can be moved out of the facility directly to a processing and recycling facility. The next three topics, the next three sources of lithium-ion battery fires all relate to battery damage, and I think are probably the most pertinent to the scrap industry. That we have damage while in use, which is, you know, I'm actually using my battery and I drop it in such a way to where there's a break between the positive and negative, the cathode and the anode portions of the battery, and it goes into thermal runaway. So interestingly, it's been a while since I've flown, but if you remember the last time you've flown, any airline you fly on now will give you a message at the beginning of the flight that says, if you drop your battery, or you drop your phone, don't try and get it on your own. Call us and we'll help you get your phone. The reason that they tell you that is that they've determined that a major source of lithium-ion battery fires on passenger aircraft is phones and other portable electronic devices, or PEDs, as the industry calls them, get dropped down into a seat, and then the passenger tries to move the seat to find it and ends up cracking that phone and causing a battery fire. Battery damage while in transit can typically be addressed with good packaging. There are a number of cases where I've seen individuals try and make use of the exceptions for larger batteries. So a battery over 26.5 pounds is not required by the Department of Transportation and PHMSA, the Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety Administration, to have any type of packaging at all. It can be secured to a pallet or other material handling equipment. But the only requirement is not just the weight of the battery. That battery needs to be in a strong outer casing that's impact resistant. And so really making sure that you're not just compliant, but you're understanding what you're doing and making good sense decisions about how you package larger batteries is important. And then the last topic is battery damage during disassembly. So I know that in many of our facilities, we're recycling and handling not just loose batteries, but phones and tablets, as we do it, called to recycle. And before you recycle a phone or tablet, you've got to get the battery out of it. And generally those batteries are glued in, and damage during disassembly is probably the single largest source of battery fires in the e-waste handling industry. So talking again to administrative, so staying on the topic of what can we do? And talking now, as we said, again, I mentioned administrative controls and engineered controls. So working with your employees to understand the signs of an at-risk battery. So major physical damage like dents, holes, or ruptures. As I previously mentioned, evidence of water or damage or submersion, visual leaking, smoke and vapor, obviously, but also lithium-ion batteries that are starting to go into thermal runaway will often have a smell before they have any type of sound or visual indicator as well. So working with your employees in training in order to understand what an at-risk battery is, and then have a protocol in place of what they do with an at-risk battery is a key safety and risk prevention process. As I think we all know, it's not a matter of if, and really it's not even a matter of when, it's just a matter of how frequently are you going to experience lithium-ion batteries in your facility, and what are you going to do about them when they occur. Talking a little more specifically about some best practices for the e-waste and scrap community. As I said before, gatekeeping activity for your waste generators is important. So you should know what specific waste streams each generator has and have segregation processes in place for the batteries. So your receiving crews need to understand who you're getting batteries from. As I spoke to on the last slide, identification is very important. How do you know what batteries are at risk? Planning, so site-specific tools and protocols for what to do in the event of a battery fire. And then training is employees really understanding and practicing how to react to battery fires. Some tips that are more on the engineering end. So disassembly desks should be made of metal or other non-combustible materials. Disassembly desks should be free of paper, plastic, other combustible materials. I've been into waste handlers a number of times, and I go into disassembly areas, and you've got binders and work instructions and books and cardboard all over the work desks. But ultimately, if you're handling batteries, you shouldn't have anything else combustible around you. And then every single disassembly desk should have some type of lithium-ion battery fire response aids. Not down the hall, not 8 desks away, every single desk. It's some upfront costs, but what it can save you in the long run is ultimately your entire business. And then at-risk batteries should be placed immediately into sand, vermiculite, cell block, or other type of fire containment devices. Calder Cycle recommends that each desk or work area be equipped with high heat gloves, a fire suppressant pillow, a fire blanket, cell block X or sand or vermiculite, and then some type of fireproof containment drum. As I said before, the orange Homer bucket with some sand in the bottom doesn't cut it anymore. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how frequently, and what are you going to have in place to deal with it. And I want to show a video here that goes through some details. This video was oriented towards the aviation industry, because historically in aviation, they've said to use halon extinguishers and water to put fire out. And this video really demonstrates why it is that Calder Cycle feels so strongly about products like Cell Block that actually extinguish battery fires by preventing cell-to-cell propagation. So when one part of the battery catches on fire, it keeps the rest of the battery from catching on fire. So as you can see there with halon and water, the battery is still smoking. There's still internal heat, and there's the likelihood and chance that another cell from that battery will go into thermal runaway. So the alternative solution that Calder Recycle presents, and again, this is why we've worked with Cell Block the way we have. So this is an example of what we call a PED pad, personal electronic device, and then a fire blanket over it. So that pillow is filled with Cell Block X granulated fire suppressant. You can see the fire melted a hole through the bottom of the pillow, and it melted a hole through the bottom of the pillow. The granulates were released and extinguished the fire and prevented cell-to-cell propagation, and that was in 20 seconds. So as Steve said, we're not, I'm not specifically here to sell anything, but I do want to say that Calder Cycle organizationally, and I personally feel very strongly that as an industry, we need to evolve past the Homer bucket of sand. So that's all I've got, Steve. I want to touch on a couple of things here. We know that embedded batteries are going to continue. Right to repair legislation is coming and is likely going to provide some relief for embedded batteries. As is societal pressure and governmental pressure, there's increasing involvement and requests for carbon neutrality. which is going to mean more visibility in the recycling stream and ease of recycling. We think that mandatory extended producer responsibility is definitely forthcoming. It's likely to happen in California this year, but the EPR alone will not address the safety, because at the end of the day, the more batteries that get collected, the more risk there is. So I appreciate everybody taking part in the webinar today. And I know that we're up against our time here, but Steve, I didn't know if we had any questions in the chat we wanted to address.
Well, just first, I wanted to thank you, Eric. It was a great presentation, very useful information. I mean, to have you as Call to Recycle as members of Terra, I mean, just kind of shows the value of this network that we're building, where we've got resources that everyone can plug into to learn a little bit more about some areas that are specific to their business and this industry, and something as serious as fire. And this looks like, from the presentation you shared, one of those things that is not going away anytime soon. So thank you for this information. We're looking forward to speaking with you again next month, May 20th. I did have just one question that popped up, which was, you did mention some training that you guys do. How would some of our R2 and eSteward certified recyclers maybe get some access to that?
I would say that, Steve, you can certainly send this. My contact information is on this deck, and I know, Steve, that you're going to be sending this presentation out. So any questions about anything that Call to Recycle can do to work with any of our peer organizations to help provide some training, regardless of the audience that it's catered to, we likely have information that we would love to share with you to help make a more educated or to encourage a more educated ecosystem.
All right, excellent. Well, again, Eric, thank you. Everybody, our attendees, thank you. And we'll be doing this next month, the third Thursday. That is going to be May 20th at 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll be doing part 2 of battery best practices. You all have a great rest of the day and a great tax day, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve.